Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's Blast. It is, what day is it? Tuesday, the 9th of December. Michael Brown sounds very loud. I don't know what he's doing. I can't work out if he's typing or if he's rapping a cricket.
I was typing. Sorry, there's hard work going on here. And then never stops, etc., etc.,
What are you doing? Signing someone up to the Your Party membership?
No, I wasn't. I was actually talking to the CME of all people, but never mind.
All right, name dropping.
You see.
Yeah, all right. I've got a call with him later. Not that I like to brag. Anyway, right, enough about our calls with the CME group. Lovely people. Welcome everyone to today's morning blast. I don't know what is going on in Michael Brown's end, but we'll move on. As usual, we will give a rapid roundup, well, not that rapid, roundup of what happened yesterday. A preview of today in terms of market close, market news, etc., etc. Put a smile on your face, add a bit of value to your trading day. What else? Yes, usual. These are, usual warnings apply. These are recorded live. There's no editing. So trigger warnings, etc. People might say shit, fuck or bugger. Nothing we say is trading or investment advice. Don't take us too seriously. Nothing's an endorsement unless we make it clear. Yeah, that's about it, I think. How are you?
Very well. I was going to say, we've sort of done my introduction prematurely, but good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. 9 trading days of the year left to go. Again,
how many
not that I'm counting.
Days?
Well, someone has told me off for mentioning that this morning, so I won't go there.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Okay. Onion futures have gone limit up, apparently.
Understood. Right, let's crack on. So this, as usual, we'll start with an update on price action and technical levels to watch today via our good friend Clive Lambert at Futures Techs. So he kicks off with equity markets were mixed yesterday. All a bit of a yawn. FTSE set for a weaker tone again, though. Bunds, German bonds, sold off further, breaking support at 127.89 to 94, on the way to a low of 127.28. Next downside targets are 126.90 and then 125.69. Ooh, our misses to 80.
For God's sake.
Very oversold across the curve, though, with Schatz has an RSI reading below 20 for the first time since 2022. So the Schatz obviously is the shorter form of German government bonds, 2-year notes, if I recall correctly. Gold, the shiny metal, as Clive puts it, or as I like to say, the yellow metal, put yet another doji on the daily chart. Silver also 60 bucks looming. LME copper, Dr. Copper, London copper made a new all-time high with an 11,771 print, but ended up back where it started to post a boring old doji candle. We're being offered overnight, so maybe that's done for now, looking likely to post an evening star. That's a new one for me. Reversal, unless the ball...
It's in his book.
I bet I've got the book right next to me. I'll have a flick through later. Maybe tonight when I want to go to bed and sleep. But anyway, this evening star reversal, unless the balls get busy for the rest of the session. London aluminium, rather than aluminum, hit resistance at 2,920 on Friday and failed with further weakness seen yesterday and overnight. Brent crude oil tested a short-term downtrend line on the daily chart, but sellers responded, selling off to into 62.28 overnight. The Marubozu resistance is at 63.14 for those keeping track of that. Is protecting the downtrend line at 64.10. Pretty much similar kind of price action in WTI. So just move your numbers across based on whatever the ARB's trading. Well, I call it the ARB. I don't know what the kids call it these days. Henry Hub kicked lower yesterday on at the open and bears took the cue. Anecdotally, I did see some reports of some warmer weather coming into the States. So that'd probably be the reason why I'm back of that. Posting a big down day, tearing a few eyes out as Henry Hub normally does. Clive says he's sure the 728 to 440 is an interesting area of support lower down. Gas oil, which is European side of the pond, think of it as diesel, shied away from 678.5 level cited yesterday, is now eyeing support at 648. TTF, European gas, that tried to rally yesterday, but sellers responded, and we are making new lows for this move again by the end of the day. Soybeans over in the States continues lower as flagged by last week's sell signal. And that's it from Clive. Apparently, he was going to say that aluminium pulled back, but we know that I love a pullback story.
Oh.
Anyway, what's been occurring, my friend? What's been occurring?
Well, yeah, indeed. What has been occurring, to be honest with you, it was a bit of a weird day yesterday. I think before we get on to the sort of fundamental drivers of markets,
You weren't going for a prostate exam again, Ray.
oh, Jesus Christ.
This is Michael Brown going for his fifth opinion.
Oh, no. I was just saying, before we get on to that, I think, no, not that. But before we get on, fucking hell, it's all falling apart, isn't it?
God. Christmas, mate. It's Christmas markets.
Well, I'm glad you said Christmas markets, because that's the point I was trying to make.
Right, okay.
We did see, it felt like conditions were very, very thin indeed yesterday. And speaking to a lot of market participants, be it retail or on the sort of B2B side, professional side, over the last week or so, very much starting to get the vibe that almost everyone is done for the year. And if they're not done for the year, they are going to be the second Chair Powell says good night of the press conference tomorrow evening. And obviously conditions are very thin. And I think yesterday's action was kind of representative of the odd moves that we tend to see at this time of year, but also of the fact that market participants really lack a desire to fade a lot of the moves that we're seeing. And perhaps the best example of this is where Eurozone rates are now priced. Money markets this morning pricing in about a 1 in 3 chance that the ECB deliver a hike by the end of next year. Now, I'm pretty much certain that is not going to happen. However, those hawkish bets have obviously been stirred up by Isabel Schnabel talking about how the next move is going to be higher. And essentially all you see is the market running away with that and no one wanting to stand in its way. And the same applies for as you were alluding to earlier, the sell-off we saw in bonds, the sell-off we saw in gilts, the sell-off we saw in treasuries yesterday, and also the upside that we saw in the dollar. It's always a case of, in a thin market like this, once an asset gets moving, it kind of doesn't stop because there aren't many people who want to stand in its way. And I think if anyone is new to markets and they haven't been kicking around at this sort of time of year before, just something to bear in mind if you are one of the few people who are still sort of actively participating in things at this point.
Absolutely. No, definitely. And I think it's gone from murmurs to whispers to kind of, chat around the water fucking thing and whatever they is in offices now. What is it called?
Water cooler?
Water cooler, that's it, about the rate hikes, because we've seen, definitely the volumes picked up on the chatter about it. And then obviously we've got notes coming out from Wall Street, from like sign and sell side, such as Bank of America last week about end of last week, with Trump apparently, in their opinion, going to run the economy ultra hot, and commodities are obviously the next big thing. And they're calling pretty much every commodity chart to end up looking like the gold chart. So it gives you a guide of how hot they're predicting. And obviously, any other time you'd say, well, hang on, if he's running it hot, and then you've got the Fed's reaction function to that. But how is it going to work with Trump's inside man running the Fed? It's, we might see, like you said, other nations having to go first and the Fed just holding steady. I don't know. Because I can't really see Fed's man on the inside on the Fed sitting in the big chair. First move he does is hiking rates.
No, I can't imagine that either. But yeah, that's very much going to be a 2026 story. As for the here and now, may as well start with NEC Director Kevin Hassett, because he was on television again yesterday, noting that Chair Powell, quote, probably agrees that it's prudent to cut interest rates and that the Fed must be watching the data to determine how low to cut rates. He was also talking, as you just alluded to, Ryan, about how AI allows for the potential to run the economy, what he described as a little bit hotter. I think a little bit is doing quite a lot of heavy lifting there, to be honest with you. But it is nonetheless notable that Kevin Hassett has started to adopt arguably more of an orthodox view of monetary policy in recent weeks. He was saying that it would be irresponsible to lay out a pledge now as to how rates may move next year. I think someone somewhere in the White House has said, we're going to give you the Fed chair job. You need to start speaking like a Fed chair and not just shooting from the hip every time you go onto television. So a notable change in his tone. Sticking with Washington, D.C., we did hear from President Trump speaking about trade yesterday. He was giving or announcing about $12 billion worth of aid to farmers in the United States. And he was also talking about the need for farm equipment prices to come down. Interestingly, he pledged that this $12 billion was coming from tariff revenue. Of course, this is the same tariff revenue that has been pledged for an income tax cut and has also been pledged for potential stimulus checks next year. So don't dig into the books too much on how that's all going to work out. But Trump was also talking about China. He said that he spoke with President Xi very recently, alluding to that phone call last week, and that Trump thinks Xi will be buying more soybeans from the United States, which I'm sure is something that Angie Setzer will cover later on in the Grain Blast. Trump was also threatening what he described as severe tariffs on fertilizer coming in from Canada. Quite safe to say that relations between the US and Canada are not exactly fine and dandy at this moment in time. And we also heard from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent talking trade as well, noting that he is still working on a trade deal with India. Of course, the Indians had wanted to get that trade deal done in the autumn, and I don't think even Rachel Reeves would be able to claim that the 9th of December still counts as autumn. So yet another deadline that has slipped on that front. Trump just lastly was also talking about AI. It was a busy day yesterday, the orange one. He was noting that there must be one rule book for AI and that he's going to be signing an executive order on that front this week. This is quite an interesting one, actually, because at the moment, the power in terms of regulating AI lies with the individual states in the US. This is the aim of this executive order, is to have one legislative and regulatory framework that covers all 50 United states in the Union. The ambition or the message there is basically we need one coherent, cohesive set of rules, which will make it easier for companies to do business, as opposed to having 50 potentially different sets of rules. So that's what Trump's doing on that front. Absolutely fair enough. And we also heard from Trump yesterday confirming that he is going to allow China to purchase NVIDIA H200 chips. There will be a revenue share here before anyone gets too excited. I think the US government are getting 25% of whatever is sold.
Well, so basically, right, I love how they've worded this. So they're saying, also, just to be clear, obviously everyone's picking up on the fact that it's NVIDIA is actually the same deal for AMD and Intel as well.
Yes, that's true.
I'm seeing very few people pick up on that point.
Although, weirdly, that sort of means that Intel are kind of paying themselves because obviously the US owns them.
Someone's washing some cash there, isn't it? But what I love is the word tariff hasn't been mentioned, but we have a 25% fee is attached. So it's a tariff, right? Let's be very clear on that.
Absolutely. It's there's a few brown envelopes being slid around there.
Allegedly.
Of course, allegedly. The bigger point here, though, perhaps, is that we actually heard from the NVIDIA CEO who was speaking last week. So obviously he met Trump last week. And one of the things he said in the aftermath of that meeting was, I'm not actually, probably put it a bit more eloquently than this, but what he basically said was, I'm not sure China would actually buy the H200 chips, even if we were allowed to sell them to the country. So, it's all well and good that they are now allowed to make those sales. Whether China actually makes any purchases is obviously the big question.
Because I remember probably obviously this has been a saga that's been going on for a long time. I remember it must be about a month ago, China was saying, well, actually, we don't want the H200 chips anyway.
Yeah, but by my understanding, which is a very drunken conversation with Tom Talks Cars one evening, actually at your birthday, the H200 is about 18 months behind the sort of cutting edge Blackwell chips that NVIDIA are making. So very much the sort of second best option if they were going to purchase that.
Can I just make it very clear that the rest of the people at my party were having a good time and they were enjoying themselves in the bar? It was like Michael and Tom being in the corner, being the nerds, talking about chips. Please don't associate with me with this nonsense that Michael's talking about right now.
Well, I think Ryan was dribbling over a barmaid at that point. So
it was about 5:30 in the evening. So.
Anyway, moving very swiftly on from that, more on NVIDIA. Apparently them and SoftBank are going to invest in a company called Skilled AI, SKILD. Maybe get the AI to spell the name right before you get this $14 billion valuation that they're apparently raising funds at. Good for them, I suppose. In terms of other AI and technology-related news, Adweek reporting yesterday that Google has told its advertising partners that they will be bringing ads into its Gemini AI platform in 2026. Of course, Gemini is very much taking the world by storm. And if you look at market share, it's eating away very rapidly at the market share of OpenAI. But if they start putting ads in there, then maybe that will deter a few users. And also in the tech space, Apple, their chip chief, there were rumors reported by Bloomberg over the weekend that he had told Tim Cook he was potentially looking to leave the firm. Well, now he's not. He's told staff that he is not planning to leave anytime soon. So I would imagine that Tim Cook gave him a pretty huge pay rise yesterday morning to convince him to stay. That is conjecture on my part, of course, because Apple have been dealing with a fairly chunky exodus of senior staff in recent months. Moving on from that, just a few other bits and bobs from me this morning in corporate news. The whole Warner Brothers M&A saga goes on. Of course, them and Netflix announced a merger agreement last week. Well, Paramount Skydance have now come in with a hostile takeover offer. They've offered to buy the entirety of Warner Brothers. So Netflix want to spin off the global networks business of Warner Brothers, which is things like CNN, TNT Sports, etc., and then only buy the remainder of the firm. Paramount Skydance have said, we want to buy the whole firm and we'll do it all in cash for $30 a share. And they've taken that offer directly to Warner Brothers shareholders in a hostile move. Of course, whoever ends up winning the battle for Warner Brothers, there are going to be quite considerable antitrust hurdles to jump through. One thing I would just mention in passing here is that the CEO of Paramount Skydance is a guy called David Ellison. His father is a guy called Larry Ellison, who has promised all the money for this deal, and both of them are quite good friends with a certain man called Donald Trump. So if this were to get to Trump's desk, I wonder which deal he would favour. Obviously something we're going to keep a close eye on. Other than that, overnight, we have from the Reserve Bank of Australia, they kept policy unchanged, holding rates steady at 3.6% as expected. They did note, however, that recent data suggests inflation risks are now tilting to the upside, but that it will take a little longer, their words, not mine, to assess the persistence of those inflationary pressures, very much placing emphasis on the fourth quarter CPI report we get in Australia, which is due out at the back end of January, just before the RBA's next meeting at the start of February. And sticking with policy, the Bank of England, apparently they are in a bit of trouble. They are looking at staffing cuts and encouraging their staff to take voluntary redundancy because of budget pressures. So for all of those people who say, why doesn't the central bank just print more money? Well, they can't. They haven't got any.
They can't afford the ink.
So it would seem.
Well,
that was very good.
Well, thank you. I do try. That's me peaked for today. Well, our stage today, I think we both know this week.
For the year.
Yeah, pretty much. I saved it to the end. Right, thank you for that, Mr. Brown. So before we go back to you, let's crack on with a couple of choice headlines from the open.
Oh, sorry. Actually, I was just going through the comments. So chap here has said the Chinese government also warned about avoiding NVIDIA chips. Yes, that is absolutely right. There were some sources pieces alluding to that recently, which again suggests that, fine, you can sell them, but no one's going to buy them.
Yeah, exactly that. Time for some choice headlines from the Overnight News Roundup. Again, as always, do follow Zach Eismer, our good friend that puts this together, and also subscribe to the Overnight News Roundup Substack, where you can find all of these sent direct to your inbox. Many, many more than I read out. Obviously, Michael's just covered the Trump NVIDIA /AMD /Intel news. OpenAI is set to release its latest AI model called 5.2 this week, and executives pushed through the launch over objections from employees who wanted more time to improve it. Never a great sign. The company is betting big on winning over coders and business customers. This is, I believe, the first release since Altman issued his code red because of how advanced kind of the competitors were getting. So we'll wait and see. But, it doesn't bode well that if we're getting leaks already from employees that have built it saying it's too early to launch it. So we will see how that hits. Google, another day, another EU probe over AI dominance or big tech dominance. European Union is investigating whether Google has been using its own AI tools to crush competitors. Another day, another antitrust headache for the giant. A day without an antitrust case in the EU is like a day without sunshine. PepsiCo struck a deal with activist investor Elliott Management, committing to cut costs across the company and lower prices to revive its struggling food business. Your Doritos might get cheaper. Ford is turning to French rival Renault to help rescue its European business, a sign of just how much damage Chinese automakers are doing outside the US. I believe these are going to be looking to the JV for much smaller EVs and stuff like that, kind of city cars is what I gather, but I'm assuming we'll get more colour on that shortly. Chinese foreign minister says Japan is, quote, threatening China militarily, unquote, after Japanese forces reported Chinese fighters aim radar at the aircraft. Tensions in the region are heating up fast. Just a guide on this, because I've had a few people when we tweeted about this asking what the hell does illuminating by radar mean. Basically means, if you remember Top Gun, when someone's got lock on, it goes beep. It basically means that that's the sound that these Japanese pilots are getting, which means someone's looking onto them, which is probably not a great feeling if you're in a plane being pursued by the Chinese. But
no, I was actually reading about this maybe over the weekend, and effectively it means that the long and the short of it is, if the other plane, the Chinese plane in this case, wanted to shoot you down, it could do so by literally pressing a button.
Yeah.
So, it's not a case of, we saw you on radar and we waved at you. It's a case of, we are very close to blowing you out the sky. Either if we wanted to, or perhaps more worryingly, as often is the case with these sort of things, by accident, if there was a miscommunication or pilot error or something like that.
Well, quite. And this is it. And then that will obviously triggers a response, to get out of that area by the Japanese or, the opposing aircraft, which then causes potentially escalation. But like you said, by accident, by firing missiles by accident, at the very, very start of the Russia-Ukraine war, a Russian MiG did exactly this to, I think it was definitely an RAF plane. I think it was either the Voyager kind of refueling tanker, or maybe Poseidon, which is our recon. It's like a big old airliner sized plane. Did exactly this, and the mug accidentally fired off a missile. Thankfully, it missed. And this was at the very, very start of the Russia-Ukraine war, but people have long since forgotten that. Anyway, Supreme Court looks ready. The US Supreme Court looks ready to expand president's powers to fire heads of regulatory agencies, although one key justice wants the Federal Reserve protected from political pressure. Obviously, Michael's covered the RBA, so I'll skip through that. Obviously, just one to know the Governor Bullock did signal that, quote, inflation risk tilted to the upside, unquote. Germany approving 52 billion euros in military contracts. The German lawmakers are set to green light this record-breaking 52 billion in euros in military procurement next week as the country races to build Europe's strongest conventional army. Obviously, European defence names will be getting the larger chunk of this, as so Rheinmetall, etc. Moving across the channel, British consumers are their spending fell at its fastest pace in 4 years in November as budget uncertainty spooked households during peak shopping season. One to note on, I'm sure we might have mentioned it previously in the last week or so, but I'm sure Michael will definitely agree with this. November data, because it was ahead of the budget, which everyone was shitting themselves about, it's going to throw out some dire numbers. It will be about how we bounce back in December. Really, I would almost say, look, just stick a pin in November data and kind of average it out with December data.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And actually, the same really applies for a lot of the October data as well. Because obviously, Reeves went long in terms of the budget timing. So, obviously, we've got GDP on Friday. Yeah. I'm going to be at the desk, but I don't know why, because if it's great, it's going to be some sort of statistical skew, probably from the JLR shutdown ending. If it's dismal, well, it's the run up to the budget. What do you expect?
Exactly. And it ties together nicely with what a bit of a meme, but your post yesterday, which is, do not overinterpret moves in December or around Christmas markets. There's a lot of things that you can misread into these, and it kind of same goes for UK data right now. Don't try and overinterpret November, October data. This kind of get Christmas out of the way and see what the averages have been like over the course of that period, because it's just going to be very, very choppy and very, very messy. It's not going to give any clear signals, and I'm sure the Bank of England are aware of that, or you would hope the 3 people left in the Bank of England are aware.
The MPC are now volunteers, apparently. So.
Right. They just pick people. Basically, they go into the jam pot and just ask a few questions.
Do you know what? They'll probably end up asking me. So fire away, lads.
Perfect. And you might even buy a pint. But anyway, where was I?
Don't go to extremes.
11 Chinese and Russian military aircraft entered South Korea's air defense zone on Tuesday, and the latest sign of coordinated military posturing in the region. Sticking with Russia, a shipment of Russian oil from US sanctioned Rosneft made it to China after a tanker transfer off India and a stop near South Korea. Sanctions? What sanctions? China's Vanke, which is obviously the Chinese construction giant, their offshore creditors are now talking to restructuring advisors, a sign investors are bracing for deeper debt crisis to spiral further again. Novartis, the pharma giant, is paying up to $1.7 billion, so this is weird, $1 billion, but to UK biotech Relation Therapeutics to hunt for new drug targets for allergic diseases. Big Pharma keeps writing big checks. South Korean police raided the headquarters of e-commerce giant Coupang, searching for evidence in a historic data breach that exposed personal information of more than 30 million people. And that's it from me. Back to you in the studio.
Good stuff. Sorry, Ryan. Talk about yourselves for a second.
Oh, hello. Anyone know any good jokes? I've got one.
No, I'm suddenly better.
Okay.
Sorry about that. It's an awful time for a coughing fit, but we really do not need to hear your joke about a lucky blue coat for the 15,000th time.
It's a good joke.
It's not a good joke. It's slightly amusing, but it's certainly not a joke that's safe for work. Anyway, moving very swiftly on from that, where are we today? Of course, focus now for market participants across the world, really, is on the FOMC. They, of course, begin their 2-day policy meeting today before Chair Powell, before the policy decision is announced at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening, London time, followed by Chair Powell's press conference at 7:30 tomorrow evening, London time. You would expect then that anticipation, trepidation ahead of that FOMC meeting will probably put a bit of a lid on any significant market volatility throughout the day today. We don't have that. Oh dear,
Jesus Christ.
Excuse me. God. If I make it to 3 o'clock this afternoon, which at this point is looking dubious, we will be getting the latest JOLTS job openings data out of the United States. The report is set to point to vacancies at 7.15 million in October. They will also be releasing the September job openings report in conjunction with that October print. So we'll be getting the September and the October data together. It is, of course, somewhat stale at this point, but it is nonetheless the last labour market data point we will be getting before that FOMC decision that I just mentioned. In terms of other bits and bobs to keep an eye on as we move through the next 24 hours or so, at 6 o'clock this evening, well, it's dubious, I think, at this point. Excuse me. At 6 o'clock this evening, we get a 10-year note auction out of the United States, $39 billion worth being sold off. That follows a solid 3-year sale yesterday, which stopped through the when issued by 0.8 basis points. Although, of course, do bear in mind that, the belly and the long end of curves across the globe are facing a fair few headwinds at this moment in time. Also, we've got a fair few central bank speakers, the ECB's Nagel, as well as the BOE's Lombardelli, Ramsden, Dingra and Mann. All 4 of those will be at the Treasury Select Committee this afternoon. And then we'll be hearing from the new RBNZ Governor Bremen. She is giving a briefing to journalists later on this evening. And last but by no means least, on the earnings front, there's nothing really of note before the market open. After the market close, we are due to hear from GameStop, obviously a bit of a retail favourite, although I don't really think their earnings have any bearing on what that stock does whatsoever. But I'm sure a few people will be watching them nonetheless. And, I was going to say for the time being, but maybe forever. That's me done for this morning.
Well, if you do survive the day, I may be around later on. I may buy you a pint.
I am. We can discuss this. I am out for lunch, but I will be.
Oh, even better, because that means you're getting pissed at lunch, which means me being pissed when I turn up at 5 p.m. won't look so bad.
Oh, Jesus.
I love it when a plan comes together.
It is Christmas. Why not? In for a penny, in for a pound, etc.
Exactly. Right, everyone. Tune in tomorrow for 2 hungover people doing morning blast.
Oh, maybe 3, because Clive's around as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, even better. Right, cool. I will speak to you later then, Miss Brown.
Yeah. Zach, you're in charge.
Oh, God. Jesus, take the wheel. Everyone, thank you so much as usual. We really do appreciate you, especially everyone that's been downloading these amazing efforts. Yeah, whatever you're doing, keep it